Friends, we are back in action here at Odd Shopper. Betting you is upon us. Week 8 is upon us. College football certainly upon us. The season is rolling on. We got some really interesting data points last week that we're going to get to. More importantly than that, we're going to dive into the market. We're going to place some bets. We are going to talk about some of these spreads and all of what's going on here at Odd Shopper. I'm Rasa and Matt Gajewski. Joins me, friends. It's getting wild out there. I want to ask you, we're going to get into these games. We got big ones, but I want to dive in because now the playoff picture is formulating. Penn State survives. Ohio State goes down. Not a fatal blow, in my opinion. Alabama almost lost again. Tennessee almost lost again. What did you make of a wild week 7?
Well, Tennessee should have lost. Alabama arguably should have lost. Tennessee, without a doubt, they got absolutely murdered in I can't even with Florida right now. How many points they left on the field? The turnover and down at the one, or a fumble at the 1 yard line, turnover and down in the red zone. They botched a field goal attempt at the end of the half. They didn't even get an opportunity off because of a penalty, so time just ran out on them. All this to say, Tennessee's probably not as good as people thought coming into the year. But now in the SEC, you kind of have Texas, and then everyone's fighting for what is probably going to be 2 or 3 extra spots for the rest of them. Ton of teams at 5-1, Tennessee, Bama, Georgia, LSU somehow has squeaked their way through. That's another game. I didn't think there was any coach capable of out Brian Kelly, but if there is, it's certainly Lane Kiffin. That guy just finds a way to lose big games. It was the same thing that Florida did. Oh, yeah. Ole Miss went in the red zone 4 times in the first half and came away with 3 points. I was so frustrated with Florida and Ole Miss, and it ruined my betting day. It turned what should have been an absolute slaughtering into, it ended up being break even record wise, but you lose the juice. So just I don't understand what these, and Penn State was playing with their food the whole game too. Kotelnicki cannot stop running stupid screens and trick plays. I don't know, man. Just college football has been really frustrating this year.
I had a real good start, and then it was actually a weird week. Rutgers, terrible no-show for me. Not that I invented this, but I'm telling you right now, Ball State is the infinite money glitch. Their defense is not playable. It goes over every game. That was super useful. Rice, super useful for me. And Texas was absolutely fantastic. They destroyed Oklahoma. They gave some back with West Virginia. That was stupid. They're just not that good. Pretty clearly, that was their chance, and they did not get it done. Ohio State had every opportunity. 2 good teams there, hard fought. I thought that Ohio State probably should have won the game, but they didn't, and I have no gripes about it. Anything else from that? UMass did not beat Missouri. They lost by 50 points. That was unfortunate. Georgia looked a little sluggish.
Yeah, most of these teams are on the docket today, so I won't get too much into it. Yeah. Georgia's playing with 11 third stringers. They're so hurt, so it's really hard to actually evaluate them. They might be a dark horse if some of these guys can return. West Virginia was dead even yards per play with Iowa State. They had every opportunity to win that game, but pick 6, Garrett Green came back. So that obviously cost them. And, there were a number of other games that were frustrating, of course. But I think we'll probably touch on every single one of them as we get into this. West Virginia, obviously frustrating. Ole Miss, Penn State, LSU. That game was a mess. I agree with you on Ohio State, Oregon. That game was so close. I don't feel bad one way or the other about losing that Ohio State bet. Oregon played really well. We'd kind of been waiting for that performance for them all season long. They hadn't put it together, and that was the first time we'd seen it.
Yep. Let's get into it. Georgia, Texas. We're not pulling any punches. We're going right to the big dogs. So you've got obviously an interesting game here. Georgia's underdog, and they should be. They're on the road. Texas looks awesome. Ewers came back. That defense is really good. You mentioned Georgia's banged up. Obviously, I want to ask you if you're betting the game, but I also want to ask you, and I think the answer is yes, Georgia can survive another loss, in your opinion, yes or no?
I think so, because the SEC should probably put in 4 teams. I don't know if that's going to happen. If it doesn't, that's just too far, penalizing these teams for being in an awesome conference. So I don't know what's going to shake out, but I would imagine a 2-loss team from the SEC still gets in. some of these 5-1 teams are going to end up with 3 losses. So it'll sort itself out. But Georgia, big problem has been so many injuries on defense, especially. They have a couple offensive line injuries. That's been overblown. Tate Ratledge and Jared Wilson are the main ones there. There's a couple other depth pieces banged up, but that unit's still been really good. They're 4th in pass blocking, 46th in run blocking. Haven't seen a major drop-off since the guys left. It's been on defense. Michael Williams, Warren Brinson, they both returned, but not to their full-time roles. These guys are still playing in the teens and snaps, clearly limited. Jordan Hall still hasn't played at defensive tackle. Smail Munden's been out. This team doesn't have the horses in the defensive backfield either, or maybe it's just, previous editions of Georgia would get off to the passer so quickly that it would make those DBs look good. But like Dan Jackson's been terrible. There's a lot of creaks in this Georgia defense that we hadn't seen in previous years. So other teams have been able to take advantage of it. And it's made them a shootout team. They allowed 11.3 yards per attempt to Milroe from Bama, 7.4 to Peyton Thorne. That was a dead even game yards per play. It's crazy. Like Auburn theoretically could have a win over Georgia. That was a dead even 50-50 game. You flip a coin. So of course, Auburn finds a way to lose those kind of games every single week. But I mean, that's not a good point if you're a Georgia backer. And then they just allowed 8.3 yards per attempt to Michael Van Buren of Mississippi State, who easily covered. So it's been pretty rough out there. Can Quinn Ewers take advantage of that? I think so. He's been a little disappointing to me. I think Arch is honestly a little bit better than him. He runs. I think there's more big plays with him. But Quinn Ewers just has everything put together around him, so he doesn't need to be spectacular. The O-line is amazing for this team. The pass catchers are amazing. Isaiah Bond did get hurt in the game, but I think that was more precautionary than anything. Even if it is a longer-term injury, they're so deep at wide receiver because of their recruiting and their transfers, so that's awesome. The only hole I'm really poking is this Texas team has played probably the easiest schedule in the SEC. Braden Fowler Nicolosi from Colorado State. Davis Warren from Michigan. He's a third stringer now. Owen McCowan from UTSA. He's been benched already this year. General Booty from UL Monroe, already benched this year. Michael Van Buren, backup at Mississippi State. Michael Hawkins, backup at Oklahoma. I don't know, man. This defense has elite metrics. We thought they were pretty good coming into the year. I just don't know how, is this an elite national title level defense, or is this just a pretty good defense like it was last year? We'll find out, but we don't have it yet.
That is the question. Couldn't agree more. We will find out. It's the biggest game on the slate. I don't think it's even close to the best betting game on the slate. If you had to take a position, I am leaning more with the Georgia side, to be honest.
I agree with you. I would take Georgia if you force me to. I don't plan to take it unless some of these injuries shake out positively. Just a lot of questions, mainly injuries. How good is the defense? Quinn Ewers could easily throw them out of the game. Like he tried to at points against Oklahoma. They were just so inept offensively that they couldn't do anything. But yeah, Ewers will try to lose games for sure.
That's definitely something that concerns me. There's a 4 at -110 out there. If you are looking to back the dogs, that's probably where I would look.
I think it might continue to move.
I agree with that too. To me, there's almost no position where I'm like running to the window for this one, but it's going to be a great game. There's going to be boosts, bonuses. We'll talk about Discord and all that because you're probably going to want to have a position if you get offered that. But it's not the only big game. Alabama and Tennessee, they always play, I believe, on the 3rd Saturday of October. And we got a big game here. These teams can't be messing around. Bama on the road. No, I don't want to bet that right now. Toledo, sorry. Alabama and Tennessee. 2.5 3-point spread. Both of them you mentioned could have went down last week. Whew, I don't know. Is Nico not that? I don't want to just start here, but I'm jumping around. Is Nico just not that good, or is it underclassmen growing pains? What's the deal with Tennessee's offense?
Yeah, he's young, so you never really know. He hasn't been good so far, but he's still in his second year of college. He's only started a couple games. He's now in SEC play. Growing pains could have been expected. I think people probably got ahead of their skis a little bit after like Chattanooga, myself included. But yeah, this offense has been atrocious. He's thrown 2 touchdowns since week 2. He hasn't thrown a touchdown in the last 2 games. All of his efficiency metrics, if you're looking at the positive ones, are weighted to the easy non-conference play against like Chattanooga and the Grayson McCall, Liss, NC State team, who's shown to be absolutely horrific. And then, of course, they played Kent State. So that's buoying all of his efficiency metrics, which are still pretty good. But again, isolating the last 4 contests, 2 touchdowns, no touchdowns in the last 2 games. He's not getting a ton of help. The offensive line's been pretty banged up this year. They've had both their tackles in and out of the lineup. And I still have questions how healthy these guys are. They benched 2 of their starters in their last game. John Campbell hit the bench. He was one of the tackles that had been hurt. But they also took Javonte Spraggins at guard out of the game. Kind of makes sense. They're 109th in run blocking, 55th in pass blocking. Right now, the whole offense has been, let's run the ball 28 times to Dylan Sampson. And if we can't break an explosive play, we're getting 0 out of our passing game. So I don't know if this is going to improve. A lot of it is on Iamaleava because they have really good receivers. Brew McCoy, Chris Brazell, Squirrel White. These are talented, proven commodities. So to me, it comes down to like the foundational stuff, offensive line, QB just not getting it done or at least elevating the team. But I think the real concern with Tennessee moving forward is this defense. Coming into the season, we had serious questions about the secondary. That has been the hole for this team. If their pass rush doesn't get home, you can throw the ball just straight over the top of this secondary. We've now seen it in 3 straight games. Even Michael Hawkins got them for 7.3 yards per attempt. Taylon Green at 9.9. Graham Mertz was at 8.3. Really, Florida just melted when Lagway had to come into the game after Graham Mertz tripped and fell and tore his ACL. Like, talk about a Graham Mertz level injury. Guy doesn't even get touched and tears his ACL. But anyway, this is a very serious concern in the secondary. And then they just lost their leading tackler, linebacker Keenan Peely. He tore his ACL as well. So, I mean, you're entirely dependent on this edge group getting home. Alabama's offensive line has been much better since they got back Caden Proctor. This team is pretty healthy. Some of the injury scares we've seen in recent weeks have been just that, scares. Like Devontae Smith returned. So a thin secondary has been able to overcome these nicks they've received and continue to play. And then that's the weakness of Bama's defense, the secondary. If you can't target those freshmen back there, which I have serious questions, Iamaleava can, it's only a matter of time before Milroe dissects you. This guy's still averaging over 11 yards per attempt. He only has 3 turnover-worthy plays, over 300 rushing yards, 73% completion. With the O-line being better and Proctor being back, I think they can neutralize that pass rush, and then they should just throw it over the top. Eventually, Bama's run game is going to cause some problems probably because it's just non-existent. I don't know what they were thinking coming into the year with Haynes and Miller. But yeah, this is already going to move, I think. It started at 2.5. That's where I took it. It's moved at 3. Some of those are juiced. I think this goes beyond 3.
You still have opportunities. There are a couple 2.5s out there, and there's 3s at -110. So I'm with you. I'm on the Bama side of this game. I haven't bet it yet, but I'm probably going to look to lock something in because it's going to continue to take money, in my opinion, as well. Nebraska and Indiana. Just shows, man. Indiana deserves it. They are moving up in the show. Scott, I don't know, probably one of the biggest games in school history, given their ineptness in recent decades. 6.5-point favorites. Can the Hoosiers keep it going?
I think so. I'm not as confident in this one. Nebraska, I'm just not sure what their ceiling is right now. They also have like offensive foundational problems. Some of it's not their fault. They've had 3 players that were projected to contribute on the offensive line out for a pretty significant amount of time. Both tackles, Corcoran and Prohaska, have been out. Mazkua has been in and out of the lineup. I don't know if he's going to play anyway. He's been dealing with a personal issue, had a couple snaps in the last game. But offensive line is far from a strength, especially in pass blocking. They're 73rd there. Raiola is taking an absurd amount of sacks. He already has negative 78 rushing yards. So you're definitely seeing some freshman hiccups from him at times too. There are big plays. He's still at 8.0 yards per attempt, 9 touchdowns, 3 picks. But the offense has been really limited. And we've seen them in games where, I mean, there's common opponents with Indiana. Like this team put up 14 points against Rutgers, 28 points against Purdue. Wisconsin just put up like 50 points against Rutgers, and Purdue is the worst team in the Big Ten. In overtime against Illinois, they scored 24 points. This team hasn't scored more than 28 points against pretty bad competition outside of an FCS game in UTEP, who's basically an FCS team. So there's like real offensive concerns with Nebraska right now. Their only strong point has been running the ball, and they've abandoned that plenty of times, and they continue to rotate backs. They don't seem to have a good feel for who the best one is. All this is a concern going against Indiana, who hasn't played the best competition themselves, but they've sort of checked every box along the way. It looks like Jalen Walker, their stud linebacker that got hurt against Northwestern, is expected to return. That's big for their defense because I still have a few questions. The best QB they've probably faced is Billy Edwards. So, I mean, there should be questions. But I don't buy this Nebraska offense and their ability to score. They haven't been able to score against worse defenses than Indiana. On the other side, Nebraska has an elite defense. It's what's been winning them games. Curtis Rourke has been awesome. Like, he's actually climbing in the Heisman race, but he has run pretty hot on turnovers, 6 turnover-worthy plays, 2 interceptions. The offensive line's been great, but they haven't really faced a strong pass rush yet. I still think they can get it done against Nebraska. But honestly, I'm somewhat interested in an under. You're looking at a pace that's going to be really slow. This is the toughest matchup Indiana has faced all season long defensively, and I just don't buy the Nebraska ability to score. I like Indiana. I did take them at a 6.5, which is widely available.
Yep.
But the more I've looked at this, I'm debating playing this under.
I kind of like Indiana too. This is a game where don't quote me, but you can kind of quote me. I'm looking maybe as Indiana as a money line parlay piece. Is that a decent number there? Pair them up with someone else. I do think they win the game, but you mentioned the value of these points is going to be pretty immense, particularly if it comes in under the total. So Indiana's low key they could be undefeated going to Ohio State at the end of the year, which would be hilarious. And then they will lose by like 40, but that's neither here nor there. Man, the next game, this is the definition of a trap game. And it's not even really because like Louisville's pretty good and they've always been strong at home. I'm not a fan of them. I actually had Virginia last week, and Virginia got the job done with their 7.5. Miami and Louisville. Miami is on the road 4, 4.5, 5, depending on where you look. Is Cristobal going to trip us up, or can the Canes keep it going?
I mean, probably. That's essentially your handicap at this point, because Miami is infinitely better than this team.
They really are.
It's just kind of like, do you get the Miami that played Florida, who's a very good team, or do you get the Miami that played Cal? And honestly, part of the problem was coaching. They had 11 penalties for 110 yards, which it crushed a lot of their drives. Like, Miami had an awesome offensive game against Cal. Their defense, I mean, was a little suspect. I will admit, I don't know what happened there. 12.4 yards per attempt to Mendoza. But that's a blip on the radar. They've been pretty good really in every single game they've played this year. It's not like they faced the best slate of quarterbacks, but they completely neutered Graham Mertz, who was awesome in every other game except that contest. Drones, I mean, a lot of his plays are just throwing up like prayer balls, and some of them, their receivers came down with some of them. But this Miami defense has been pretty good outside of that Cal game. They're also getting back Isaiah Alston on the edge. They've played every single game this year except for one without one of their starting edges. Whether it was Ruben Bain or Alston, they've been out every game except one, so they're both projected to be back here. They're also getting back Jalen Rivers, finally at tackle. I think, take this with a grain of salt because Cristobal has said this before, and then he hasn't played. But this time, like, everyone's reporting it, ESPN, all the major beat reporters, you know, like the Pete Thamels of the world, the guys that are on these networks. When they report something, generally it's true because they don't really stick their nose in uncertain situations. Anyway, the only time Cam Ward has been somewhat susceptible has been when he's pressured. And in the last, 2 games, 33% pressure rate, that's up from 28% on the year. That's resulted in 4 picks and 7 turnover-worthy plays. So if Rivers comes back and you can neutralize Louisville's defensive line, which is easily the best part of their defense, I think Miami should absolutely run away with this. Louisville's secondary is horrible, and they're really hurt. So part of it's not their fault, but still, this should be an absolute feasting for these receivers. Restrepo, this could be an absolute battering. Louisville's 93rd in coverage. And then on the other side, this Louisville team has started to show a lot of cracks. They lost their left tackle, which has been a huge problem. That severely dropped their pass blocking rating. You're now facing a healthy Miami pass rush. They've been good in coverage. So they're just working with a pretty poor foundation. I think they score a little bit, but Miami, honestly, I think runs away with this one.
I'm with you. I'm a backer of Miami all year. I think they can make the playoff. I think they can win the ACC. I think they will not get tripped up here. Give me Miami. There's a 4 out there. That is the number that I'll target. There's 4.5 at -110. I could target that as well. That's one that'll be in Discord shortly. Speaking of Discord, very quickly, if you guys haven't checked it out, honestly, There's so much. We were just talking college basketball is going to be here soon. There's so much action going on in the Tails discords. If you haven't been over there, just go to Odd Chopper, go to Tails, discover insiders, and check out all the people that we have. It's not just me and Matt. So many different people, so many different communities. Find the one that works for you. Obviously, personally, I really believe that if you are hungry for some college football content, you've got two of the best right here. The links are below. Come in for the week. See what you guys think. Again, I'll bring up some of the information on mine. It's all right there for us. We'll see you in there. Get in, get access to early lines, all sorts of good stuff, because these games makes all the difference. Here we go. Now we're getting a little wild. Not really, actually, but Georgia Tech's a good team. I've been on Georgia Tech all year. I'm glad that they look like they're making strides to being relevant again. This is a pretty big step. I believe this game's in the heart of Atlanta. I think it's in the Mercedes-Benz Dome. Don't quote me on that, but it's a 12-point spread. Is that too high? It feels too high to me.
So they came out. Haynes King is hurt. He's day-to-day. The line moved when that news came out. So
Think he plays?
I have no idea.
Who's there? Do they have a backup?
Zach Pyron, they use him a lot, actually, but not in like true quarterback sets. They use him as a Taysom Hill type. He comes in at the goal line when they QB sneak stuff because he's enormous. But yeah, I mean, the whole handicap is does he play or not? Because I don't think you can back Notre Dame right now at this number. They have a ton of problems. They're so hurt on the offensive line. This unit is atrocious pass blocking. They're 104th. And that's affected Riley Leonard. People want to just come for Riley Leonard's head. I mean, he's being pressured instantly. His receivers are all terrible. Bo Collins is your best receiver. We've talked about this a million times. Like, that's just pure negligence coming into the year. All the four-star, I don't know if this is a development problem or a talent evaluation problem when these kids come out of high school. For whatever reason, all these four-star receivers they get just suck. The best player they have is their tight end, and they won't use him in a full-time role because he had the serious season-ending injury last year. So, I mean, this offense is just inept unless they can run the ball down your throat. And I'm not sure they'll be able to do that against Georgia Tech. You look at their defense, the strength of it is up front against the run. They're 26th there. They're 101st in coverage. So this is kind of a bad stylistic matchup for Notre Dame. They've done a bunch of weird things on offense that have prevented them from having success at times. You know, they won't use their best running back, Jeremiah Love, in a full-time role. They've kind of lived and died by these explosive Riley Leonard runs, and he gets about one a game. So, I mean, it's becoming more sustainable for them. But Notre Dame has lost a lot of good players on their team, not just offensive linemen. They had their best edge, Jordan Botelho, go down earlier this year. They just lost their best corner, Benjamin Morrison. If you look at any mock drafts, these are early mock drafts, of course, but he's projected to be a first-rounder right now. I know those things changed a lot, but still, we're talking about a talented player. If he's in first-round mock drafts, they're going to turn to a freshman, I think, back there. They just don't have a lot of depth. Like Mickey, the guy who normally would step in as your sixth defensive back, hit the transfer portal because he was unhappy with his playing time. You have to face Haynes King, who's dealing with, allegedly, we'll see if Haynes King plays. If he doesn't throw this all out the window, I won't be betting the game if Haynes King is out. But if he's in, I would probably try to pick off one of these 12s, or maybe it'll get even better. They have a good offensive line, 33rd in pass blocking, 62nd in run blocking. Haynes King and Jamal Haynes are quality in the run game. Both receivers, Singleton and Rutherford, have been productive this year. That'll be a huge problem Notre Dame has to stop without their best corner. And Notre Dame's defense has shown cracks at times as well this year. It's not like Notre Dame has been perfect. Tyler Shugg and Isaac Brown got them pretty decently on the ground. They even allowed 10 yards per attempt to Ethan Hampton. And it hasn't been the best slate of quarterbacks. I don't know what Wegman did in that game, but that is the best data point. Then you go from Wegman to Hampton in Northern Illinois, allowing a first down per pass attempt. That's a problem. But then they allowed 6 yards per carry to Purdue. They played, Miami, Ohio. That's a MAC team. Tyler Shugg and Isaac Brown, they were at 5.5 yards per carry. And then they just played Stanford, who's an F. So I don't really know how good this Notre Dame defense is. Aside from Texas A&M and Louisville, this might be the best offense they've faced. And it's probably pretty close to like a Texas A&M or Louisville as well. This Georgia Tech team can move the ball. So I'm interested in a plus 12. We'll need Haynes King news.
Yes. Well, we're certainly going to need those news, but I reiterate that. You mentioned, I know you went through, that's that's a Will Johnson level, from what I've seen, in terms of the best corners out there type loss. You don't just replace a guy like that. They're going to be relying on freshmen. I'm not super sold on Notre Dame. in general. We get double digits and Haynes King. I'm on the Yellow Jackets.
Yeah, and they're at home.
Yeah. Yeah, like I said, I think the game's it's not true home, but I think they're home. But anyway, it doesn't matter. This game shouldn't exist. We should just skip it and pretend that it doesn't. But Michigan and what exactly was Illinois doing last week? I don't know if you caught any of that game, but wow. Just wow. And now Michigan's a 3-point road favorite. This is an ugly game. Do you see an angle?
I wanted to sell Illinois, just not against Purdue with their backup quarterback, who apparently is Joe Montana.
How? What is like it seemed like Purdue legitimately was scoring in 21-point bunches. Like they invented new scoring plays. Wow.
So there's a ton of stuff I want to sell with Illinois, and I did bet Michigan, I think, already. If not, they were on the list. I had them flagged for sure. I did take, wait a second. I did take them, -3. And, well, it was -1, and I missed that number as I was going through stuff. It just moved in a heartbeat, which makes sense. So Illinois, their offensive line has been a concern. They're 93rd in pass blocking, 59th in run blocking. They don't really do anything well. Altmaier's kind of been a superhero, but his underlying metrics are so concerning. I'm not sure there's a quarterback that's run hotter on the turnovers. 9 turnover-worthy plays converted to 1 interception. That is unbelievable. They should not have won as many games as they've won so far, solely based on just these turnover-worthy plays. And then you look to the defensive side of the ball. I mean, they've been pretty lackadaisical at times here as well, and they've shown plenty of cracks. The main one, I think, is against the run, where they're 61st. Now you have to go up against this, or excuse me, they're 125th. I was looking at the wrong metric. So you have to go up against a Michigan team that all they want to do is run the ball. That's a big concern to me. They just allowed 6.9 yards per carry to Ryan Brown, 9.3 to Devin Mockabee. Both Katrin Allen and Nick Singleton over 5.5. Even Nebraska had some success on the ground. Central Michigan's Miles Bailey was at 8.2. Devin Neal for Kansas, 7.2. And that was a huge concern coming into the year. They lost 3 guys from their front, some of them to the NFL, and like a Jerzon Newton. I don't know, man. They've been living dangerously and flying close to the sun, and they almost got clipped in their last game. Michigan's just a better team overall, even without a quarterback. They're not moving to Jack Tuttle. Feel kind of bad for – sorry?
Jack Tuttle. Jack Tuttle's been around.
I think he was in the same recruiting class as like a Zach Wilson or something. I mean, he's like 26 years old.
He was on Utah for a while.
I think he was on Indiana for a time. But yeah, I sort of feel bad for Davis Warren when you actually look at the efficiency profiles of all 3 of these QBs. He's been the best, and it's not really that close. But yeah, Michigan's probably going to get back their center. They had a ton of injuries, but they just had the bye week, so we'll get a report on this. A lot of them were questionable, and then they missed the game. So I'm expecting just a much healthier Michigan team in this spot. They're somewhat decent run blocking. They can't pass block. They're 46th run blocking. At least Khalil Mullings has been good because Donovan Edwards has been horrible this year compared to previous years. And this defense is awesome. So if they actually can convert some of these turnover-worthy plays that Altmaier has into actual turnovers and maybe a short field for an offense that's limited, I think this could get greasy. And I'm going to sell this Illinois team and take Michigan. I already did take it at the 3.
Sticking in the Big Ten. Wisconsin looked pretty. Rutgers has got issues, but credit to Wisconsin. They went into what I thought was a pretty tricky spot, and they beat the living hell out of Rutgers, handled them, and now they got to go to Northwestern. Northwestern, credit to them, destroyed Maryland, absolutely rolled them. So 2 teams that are coming off, upset wins minorly in Wisconsin's case, majorly in Northwestern's case. These are middle of the road Big Ten teams, but do you think that Wisconsin can keep the road win streak going?
I think so. And Maryland, I think, is maybe the worst team in this.
Maryland's awful.
We've been selling Maryland forever. All their lines have been mispriced. You're talking about in unlimited money factory or whatever you said. Betting against Maryland has been that because that team is horrible. So now you get Wisconsin going to whatever that stadium, the temporary one they're calling on the lake. I don't know. It seats like 2,000 people.
Yeah.
But this Wisconsin team has played 2 cupcake opponents. Rutgers was down 3 starters on their defense, and And that's not even including the linebacker who's been out for the year. So as high as 4 if you want to include him. And Rutgers just isn't the team that can really withstand that. The strength of Rutgers heading into the year was their defense because they returned so many guys. They don't have elite recruiting. It's not Georgia. You don't have 4 and 5 stars behind these guys. And Wisconsin ripped them. It was worse than I thought, but still, you can see why it happened. And then Wisconsin crushed Purdue. That's Purdue. So I don't know what to make of this offense. They've looked good. Braden Locke's been okay. He has 6 turnover-worthy plays, 4 picks. He's a backup QB. It's about what you'd expect. They're down Bryson Green and Will Pauling. Will Pauling got hurt in-game for the second time. It was a different injury. But they've had a lot of really good depth receivers step up. Tretch Kekahuna's been awesome. They're getting seemingly a go route to Vinny Anthony every single game, and teams can't seem to cover him. He does have elite speed. But I don't know if this is going to continue at some point. It's just a very strong Wisconsin offense that we haven't seen. And it's troubling to me that it came against 2 really weak opponents, a hurt one in Rutgers and just a bad one in Purdue. Northwestern's defense is still pretty good overall. Definitely the best defense they've faced in about, a month. USC's defense isn't as good. Northwestern's 35th, 25th against the run. The real problem is they're 75th in coverage. So do they allow some of these big plays to Vinny Anthony, Kekahuna, CJ Williams? I don't know. They've definitely allowed a lot of production in the past. Rourke got him for 11.5 yards per attempt. But then can Northwestern do something? They've looked pretty decent the last 2 games. So Lausch, I think the biggest difference between him and Mike Wright is he's not turning the ball over. He has 1 turnover-worthy play. Northwestern doesn't play explosive offense. They need these methodical drives. And when you had the Mike Wright turnovers, this team was just dead in the water. They lost games they should have won, like the Duke contest. But Lausch's ability to just put the ball where it's supposed to, and then he's mobile, so he can still do a lot of the stuff Wright was doing on the ground, scramble and pick up first downs. It's just led to like a less volatile Northwestern, and they've played closer to where we expected them coming in. Their offensive line is good as well. So is Wisconsin's. Both these teams have elite O-line, so they can run the ball. They haven't got much production out of their backs, but Porter's been injured. He's back now, so perhaps that's a strength for them. Wisconsin is 86th in run defense, so they have a lot of production on the ground. Both of these defenses kind of are weak in the area that the opposing offense wants to exploit. So that's semi-concerning to me, but ultimately, like Wisconsin just is the more talented roster. If this plays to the talent level, they should cover the 7, but having a weakness where Northwestern is allegedly successful with the run game, that's concerning enough to me where I'm probably going to stay away with this, especially with money pouring in on Wisconsin on the road.
Yeah, this is it's also a 41 total. And I'm not saying that's wrong. I just, again, when you're on the road laying a touchdown and a 41-point total, it's a little greasy. I'm not going to lie. I don't know if I'm going to be able to do it. I don't think I'm going to. We talked about a lot of Big Ten teams. Let's go to the SEC. The quarterback carousel, the rotation at Florida is over because of injury. Obviously, never good to see that, but it does give some clarity on what the offense will look like. They're back in the swamp taking on Kentucky. I mean, if Florida had Liberty's schedule, they'd go undefeated this year. I think that's pretty fair to say. They're a good football team. They just play really good football teams all the time. I don't know what to make of Kentucky. I honestly don't. With that in mind, Gators are pass, or do you think that Kentucky can further turn the heat up on the Florida coaching staff?
I don't know what to make of either of these teams, man. Kentucky, so they got blown out by South Carolina. They played Georgia to a 1-point game. They were pretty soundly outgained in that contest. It was a lucky 1-point loss. And then they beat Ole Miss in a game where they got absolutely murdered in yards per play. They had no business winning that game. Ole Miss missed a field goal. They fumbled at the Kentucky 18. Just like Ole Miss and Lane Kiffin cannot get out of their own way. This is like Mario Cristobal, Brian Kelly level incompetence from Lane Kiffin. I cannot believe he's been in position to win so many of these games and he can't do it. Anyway, Florida's kind of the same. I mean, how many times has Billy Napier last week? Okay,
yeah, last week.
Let's go through this game against Tennessee. Like, my goodness. Some of it was, Tennessee giving them the ball. Like, Tennessee fumbled at the Florida 24. I think that was their opening possession. But then Florida moved the ball downfield and they punted at the Tennessee 44. So just pure coward move by Napier. Then you had a Florida turnover on down, a 4th and 1 at the Tennessee 18. Okay. They had a fumble at the Tennessee 1-yard line. Then Tennessee threw an interception, which gave Florida a chance to kick a field goal before halftime, but Florida got a penalty. They had a runoff, and then they didn't even get one off. Next, you go into the second half. Florida had an interception at their own 20. This is when this is like right after Mertz got hurt, and Lagway's incompetence. We'll get into him. So they throw an interception at their own 20, immediate field goal. They had a turnover on down, a 4th and 2 at the Tennessee 38. They had a terrible punt, which gave Tennessee a 2-play, 29-yard drive, and then Florida, of course, missed a field goal in overtime. How many points did they leave on the board / give Tennessee in that game? This game ended 23-7. This could have been like a 37-10 Florida battering of Tennessee. That is how incompetent Billy Napier has been with his offense. As far as it pertains to this game, I'm no Kentucky backer. I have Florida ahead in most power metrics, which makes me interested in the Florida side. Obviously, the line is moving towards a pick 'em because of the Graham Mertz injury. They had been using, the quarterback roulette wheel for drives early in the season, but over the last 2 games, Graham Mertz has worked solidly ahead of Lagway, which made a lot of sense. Graham Mertz had been much better than Lagway. Still, Lagway came in with pretty good efficiency metrics, but the second he had to actually run an offense himself, and teams knew it was going to be him every drive, he just completely melted against Tennessee. He had a horrible game through his first interception, that his first turnover-worthy play of the year that resulted in an interception. But still, Lagway has a pretty good sample this year. It's just how much do you weight that horrible performance against Tennessee? The foundation here is awesome. Somehow the transfers they added in the portal, which were a big question for me coming into the year, have paid dividends on the offensive line. They're 7th in pass blocking, 44th in run blocking against the hardest schedule in America. That's a great foundation. They got back their wide receiver 1, Eugene Wilson, to pair with, DK and Badger. This is a great receiving core. Montrell Johnson looks like he dodged a bullet with that injury. Everything that's come out of Florida has reported that he's okay. So, your offense is humming. Your defense has been shockingly good. They're 47th overall. I thought they'd be worse than this. They're 10th in pass rush. They can definitely get after the quarterback. So, they're 23rd overall with a good pass rush, and they've shockingly been 21st in run defense. This is a pretty good Florida defense overall. Kentucky's the 47th defense overall. They've shown cracks to a ton of players. Pavia got him for nearly 8 yards per attempt, Dart for 9.7. This team is really limited overall. Their secondary has been bad. Hairston's been out for them. They're 71st in coverage. They're the 10th ranked pass rush. So if you can stop their pass rush, which Florida's offensive line should be able to, you can stop this Kentucky defense and throw the ball over the top of them. And then on offense, Vandegrift has been so limited. He's run really hot with turnovers, only 2 interceptions, 8 turnover-worthy plays. The offensive line is 101st in pass blocking, 84th in run blocking. They've been a revolving door back there. I think Kentucky's by far the worst team, but the things that worry me are DJ Lagway and the coach, like Billy Napier. If you want to take Florida, certainly don't do it now. It's moving because of the Mertz news. And you're probably going to get them at a dog price, which maybe it gets to the point where we want to take Florida if it moves enough. But I don't know, man. This is a hard game because Napier's incompetent.
He's definitely incompetent. I'm definitely interested in the Florida side, though. I'm not taking it yet. I'm going to wait and see. I'm just not sold on Kentucky. I really am not. Maybe Vanderbilt's just the best team ever. I don't know.
Vanderbilt's pretty good, but Kentucky's fraudulence in their wins is just egregious.
You mentioned that they're limited. They're just not a team. And now Florida, you're back home. I think there's enough to like here that's the side for me. Now we get Auburn's back. Great. Wonderful. Auburn and Missouri. Missouri's coming off a tricky road game in Amherst against UMass. They were able to navigate those waters by halftime, by the first quarter. Auburn, 4.5-point road dogs. Honestly, I think the books are showing a lot of respect to Auburn, despite them just melting game after game after game. They're saying this should be very competitive.
Yeah, it opened at 6, and then it moved quickly. I don't know if book showed respect or if bettors were just wise to their error quickly. I grabbed a 5.5 as it moved towards 4. That's where it is now. It's Auburn or pass at 4. I'm not sure I could take the current number, but
There's 4.5 out there.
that's pretty reasonable. I don't know. You're kind of in no man's land, so I don't know if it matters and you're really racing up to the window. Perhaps Missouri would take some late money and then you could get a better number. Obviously, the road spot's not great, but Missouri has been lifeless in really every game against a competent opponent. Their wins are against Murray State, Buffalo, Boston College in a 6-point margin of victory, and then UMass. Sorry, UMass. But they got absolutely blown out by Texas A&M, and then they beat Vanderbilt in a game they should have lost. They had a 27% post-game win expectancy. I guess the concerns for Auburn, if you are an Auburn backer, are Missouri's offense has played way down to their level of competition this year. Like, this offense should hum. They have a great O-line, 21st in pass blocking, 13th in run blocking. We thought they were pretty good coming into the year. They lost 2 guys, but they got pretty decent transfers to fill the void. So this was an above-average offensive line coming into the year. They've shown it. The skill position groups are all veterans at this point. Brady Cook, Luther Burden, Theo Weiss. They added 2 transfers at running back, so that was kind of the same thing they did previously with Cody Schrader. We thought they could at least do a decent job. They will be facing a very tough defense. This might be the best defense that Missouri's played all season long. I would rank them that way. They're right up there with Texas A&M, and I think a little bit better than Texas A&M. They're 26th overall, 10th against the run, 38th in pass rush. The only place they've been vulnerable is coverage. They're 83rd because they've had a couple of injuries. Champ Anthony, their best defender in the secondary, is out for the year. So if Missouri's going to succeed, they need to exploit that mismatch. Just not sure they can do it against a pretty good Auburn front that will get after you. This should be the best pass rush Auburn or Missouri has faced all year. Auburn would definitely provide that. So perhaps if there's a hole in the O-line, Auburn can finally exploit it. Then on the other side of the ball, I am not buying this Missouri defense whatsoever. They've played Murray State, Buffalo. They allowed 8.9 yards per attempt to Tom Castellanos, 12.5 to Connor Wegman, who, I mean, if we're analyzing Connor Wegman data points, Notre Dame made him look like Deshaun Watson, and then Missouri makes him look like Patrick Mahomes. I don't know. So just very weak data points for the Missouri defense for them to be ranked 18th. They're still 61st in coverage. We've talked about Peyton Thorne a ton. He's been the least lucky quarterback, the most unlucky, the exact opposite of Luke Altmaier. He somehow has 6 interceptions on 3 turnover-worthy plays. Still, O-line is good for this team, 44th in pass blocking, 29th in run blocking. They've had running backs with egregious fumbles. Like, if they can just get out of their own way, they should be able to score on Missouri. And then I think they should be able to stop them on defense with how lifeless this Missouri offense has been at times. Tough game at the 4.5. That's still a lean for me at that point. But if you can find like a 5 or a 5.5, or it gets back there, I would play Auburn.
Yeah, Auburn's done a lot of stupid stuff that they shouldn't have, but they objectively, they've also done a lot of things that are just like bizarre outside their control, where they fumble out of the back of the end zone, the ball gets deflected. It's just been a crazy run out for them. I would know. So would my bank account. It's just been absolutely brutal backing them. But I hear you. I absolutely do. And keep an eye on that number. A couple more games left. I'll also talk about Bet365 and a little bit, talk about how to get some money right back in those accounts. But we got South Carolina and Oklahoma. So it turned out that Oklahoma does, in fact, need receivers to be successful. We saw that against Texas, and they had none. Hawkins took an absolute beating in that game. Now you're back in Norman, a little easier situation. First off, do you expect any of these guys to return? And if they don't, do you expect them to make a move to Arnold? And if they don't, do you expect Hawkins to be able to kind of run a dual threat to success?
I don't know if they'll move back to Arnold. They say they won't, but I don't know. You never know. I don't know who is going to be back for this team. Injury reports come out on Wednesday night. We've essentially gotten no information or incorrect information out of Oklahoma. They've been a team that's basically disregarded the injury report. And again, in the SEC, they're required to submit an injury report. It is not required to be accurate. You can change it at any time. You can put whatever you want on there, and you can change it at any time. So if you wanted to, Andrew Anthony, who's been dealing with complications from his knee injury last year, if they wanted to list him out, they could upgrade him to probable 10 minutes before the game. It doesn't matter in the SEC. So I don't know who's going to play. You're going to have to take this right up to game time. their season it's not quite lost. Like they're 4-2, but it's not looking good. So I don't know if they're going to rush these guys back. I think red shirts might be on the table for some of them because like a lot of them haven't played in 4 games. Just a mess of a situation. Their offensive line is terrible. They're dealing with offensive line injuries, 98th in pass blocking, 117th in run blocking. They started to show severe cracks on defense. It was a unit that wasn't very deep. And they lost Gentry Williams and Kendall Doby. I will say Bowen did make his first start back there, one of their elite recruits. So maybe it'll be better. He had an awesome game. It just didn't matter when Ewers found out not to throw it at his side. So might not be enough. I don't think it is. South Carolina's offense is so bad, though. I mean, this team just lives through their defense, and it's really unfortunate they can't get any semblance of offense because quietly, this defense has continued to produce. I thought they were going to be worse, and they've shown cracks, like 10.6 yards per attempt to Dart, 9.1 to Milrow. They keep just getting turnovers, but they have been extremely good against the run. So I don't know what to make of this South Carolina defense. I'm starting to come around to the idea that they might be pretty good. I'm still not going to buy that they're elite. But that's unfortunate because their offense is so inept. They can't do anything when they get these short fields and when they have their defense bring their offense back on the field. 104th in pass blocking, 108th in run blocking. They're starting a freshman left tackle. They just benched their right tackle. The guy who came in was also terrible. They have 2 really low-level transfers playing at guard. All their receivers come from really low levels of competition. The only highly recruited player, Nick Harbor, stinks. He's just truly a track athlete. And Sellers, I mean, he has a lot of problems, turnover-worthy plays. He's at 7. But when you're getting pressured on 42.5% of your dropbacks and your receivers are all MAC guys and Sunbelt guys, like what do you expect? So I don't know. Oklahoma's defense is awesome. They should stop the South Carolina team. I typically would have interest in an under, but it's at 40, and these teams.
That's what I was going to ask you.
They try to play fast.
Slowed the tempo.
They have slowed. South Carolina's 51st in pace. Gives me pause still. Honestly, I think I would rather just play South Carolina at the plus 2.5, but Oklahoma's taking a ton of money. You could probably get a 3 if you wait. Even at 3, I'm still really hesitant. So I think I'm just going to be staying away.
It popped to 3 for what it's worth. So if you want the 3, you can get it readily available. I think it's going to be pretty bad, though. I could honestly see like a 17-10 game. It's going to be ugly. No doubt about it. Whew. All right, we got a couple games left. I want to mention real quick, though. Listen up, everybody. Money alert. Bet365. 5-200. Very simple. Link is below. If you're in a state, you haven't signed up to Bet365, you can get $200 in bonus bets simply by signing up and placing a bet. Even if the bet loses, you get $200 in bonus bets. It's really that simple. I'm not going to spend a ton of time on this. It's that good of an offer. Great way to boost the bankroll. You take that $200, bet on whatever you want. 21 plus, 18 in Kentucky. Please play responsibly if you have a gambling problem. Call 1-800-GAMBLER. But shout out to Bet365 for offering that. They're not in a ton of states, but the states that they are in, absolutely game-changing opportunities. A couple more games, then we'll give some best bets. I'm going to create a scenario, and we'll get out of here. Of course, we'll have the egregious portion of this video. And if you've made it this far, please hit the like button, subscribe. You guys know the drill. That really helps us out. We're building up an absolutely awesome community here at OddsShopper, both in the Discord, but just on YouTube as well. So appreciate you guys listening wherever you are. Colorado and Arizona. Colorado only plays in absolutely drunk, off-the-rail games that are past my bedtime. Travis Hunter got hurt. They were not able to get it done. Now they got to go to Arizona. 4.5-point dog? Ooh. Colorado a pass, or do you think Arizona can right the ship?
I'm probably going to play Colorado. Just want news on, of course, Travis Hunter, and they have a lot of guys that got hurt in that game, so that would be helpful just to know. I think at full strength, they're by far the better team in this matchup. But
I agree.
Among the players that got hurt, Travis Hunter, he's the most impactful with his two-way ability, and he's their best player in the secondary by a wide margin. But he never left the field. He was on the sidelines, fully padded up. Like, he wasn't even getting treatment, so it suggests to me it was precautionary, but I don't want to just assume these things. I would like to actually have some more information before making the wager. But it wasn't just him. Jimmy Horn left the game with the injury. They brought in Omarion Miller to replace him. He got hurt and left the field. They brought in Terrell Timmons. He got hurt and left the field. But then they moved to Draylon Miller, who's a 4-star freshman. He looked awesome. And they're really deep at receiver. This is by far the deepest unit on the team, I think. I mean, everyone wants to come play receiver in the transfer portal. So they've been able to get a lot of recruits coming in. Outside of Jimmy Horn and Travis Hunter, they still have Will Shepard, DeJounte Wester. And if they're going to get production out of their 4-star freshman, Draylon Miller, I'm not that concerned. So really the biggest thing is, does Travis Hunter play for the defensive side of the ball? That's what's really important, because teams that have been able to stop Ted McMillan stop Arizona. And obviously you'd want Travis Hunter. If I were Dion, I would just park Travis right on Tet the entire game, maybe put a safety to show a little bit over the top. And then what can Arizona really do? Fafita has taken a massive step back. I don't think a lot of it is his fault. Some of it is for sure, at least, but 11 turnover-worthy plays, 9 interceptions is running kind of bad on those, but still, he's putting the ball in harm's way a lot. This offensive line had a ton of injuries coming into the year. They're down 3 guys that projected to start, so it's been pretty problematic there. They only have 1 legitimate offensive weapon outside of Fafita. Teams have been able to take him away and neuter the offense. The secondary is putrid for this team. Now that they lost Traden Stukes and Gunnar Maldonado, they also haven't had Chuba Maea on the defensive line. I mean, I don't know if this is going to get any better. This has a chance to just be a horrific matchup against a team with Shedeur and these receivers that's going to air it out on you. They're 74th in coverage and falling week by week because of the injuries. They're also 93rd in defense overall, 95th against the run. Not that it matters against Colorado, but still, that is another weakness. If Colorado ever did decide to run the ball, maybe they'd have success here. And I guess the one last thing, the X factor here, is this offensive line has not been as bad as people have said. It is 69th in pass blocking, 89th in run blocking. Shedeur hangs onto the ball forever because he had these late developing route concepts. Some of these sacks are definitely on him or the OC who's calling these plays, but that's worth mentioning. And then the other thing that's kind of a misnomer is this Colorado defense has been better than people have suggested too. Now, if you take away Hunter, that would be huge. Yeah. But still, teams have not had the same offensive success on Colorado that they did last year. They've done a pretty good job holding their opponents outside of, Avery Johnson kind of got him when Hunter got hurt. That is what it is. But yeah, I mean, this team is overachieved compared to expectation. If Hunter plays, I'm going to take Colorado.
Colorado pass for me as well. You just mentioned it. Talent-wise, I just don't see it with Arizona. And credit to Colorado. I'm not the biggest fan of them. They've hung in a lot of games. All right, we're up against it a little bit. We got time for one more, then we're going to give some best bets. We'll go LSU and Arkansas, the games we didn't get to. Don't worry. Another episode will be dropping in a few days. Me and Matt. If you guys have any questions, Matt_Gajewski at JazzRazBets on Twitter. Find us there. You can find us in our Discords. Again, the links are below. Come in even just for the week. Check out what we're doing. Get access to some good stuff. See if you make some money. Absolutely worth it. LSU and Arkansas. I think this has a cool name. I don't know what it's called. It's a rivalry game. Good for them. LSU. I don't really like this team, I'll be honest, but they got it done. Now, they were in Death Valley. They're not there this week. Arkansas also been getting it done. Maybe Pittman saves his job. I don't know. It's a 2.5-point spread. What are we doing here?
This is the one I'm probably on the fence the most, with my finger on the trigger to bet. And it's where it's sitting now with all these 2.5s juice. I think it's kind of, you need to fire or you need to pass. So maybe you can talk me into this one way or the other. But you mentioned it. I'm not really a big backer of LSU this year, and they've been incredibly lucky to be where they are. The South Carolina game, they should have lost in that contest. They were soundly outgained yards per play. They did lose to USC, which hasn't been fantastic. And then they beat Ole Miss in a game where they should have lost. They were soundly outplayed in that game as well. We already talked about Ole Miss's stupid struggles, but just again, Ole Miss probably should have been up 20-0 at halftime. Instead, they dropped a bomb, a wide open bomb, perfectly dropped into the breadbasket of All-American Trey Harris, who drops it uncharacteristically. Ole Miss then proceeds to miss a field goal. Then LSU throws an interception at their own 13, which proceeds to be followed by a turnover on downs at the 1-yard line. Then LSU had a turnover on downs in Mississippi State territory, which finally was what gave us points. But I mean, just that run out, it probably should have been like 17-7, at least, if not worse, at half. So just the Ole Miss incompetence, Lane Kiffin allowing LSU to stay in the game, it gave them the LSU win. Anyway, Arkansas is kind of the same thing, but I think to a worse degree. Arkansas was maybe the team I wanted to fade the most in this conference, and they've had the same thing. They beat Tennessee in a game that was very fluky, and then they had some other really weird contests. They did lose to Texas A&M. They should have won that one. They played Auburn. They won and should have lost. They had a 7% post-game win expectancy. So they're volatile, and they're playing all over the place. But when you break these two teams down, Arkansas, I think, has more questions. They have more questions on defense. They're 106th in coverage. The only place they excel is against the run. They're 29th there, but LSU has no interest in running right now. Their pass rate is above 60%. They're projected to get back some of their receivers, which is big. And I mean, the offense has been fine. It's been the defense for LSU that's been the problem. So can Taylor Green exploit that? His efficiency metrics are all boosted by the atrocious defense they played in the first 3 weeks. You had Arkansas, Pine Bluff, Oklahoma State, who can't stop anyone, and UAB. Since then, he's really struggled. And his turnover-worthy plays have spiked drastically. He's at 9 this year now, without having really any in the first half of the season. The O-line is 92nd in pass blocking, allowing pressure on 41% of dropbacks. LSU's defense is banged up, but they still have been pretty good off the edge. They're 10th there. Their big weakness is in coverage, 89th. And they got back their best defender in the secondary, Zy Alexander. He's really the only one with a pulse, so he can kind of erase one of your premier offensive talent pieces at receiver, which is a big boost for LSU. I kind of want to back the Tigers. I'm just really nervous because I don't like either of these teams, but I really don't like Arkansas.
Yeah, Arkansas, they've done a couple things to surprise me, but I'm not changing my priors either. I hear you. And you're inside 3. I haven't bet it yet. Want to be clear, but keep an eye out. That could end up on the card. For Saturday, okay. I meant to ask you, but you were talking through so much good information, I kind of forgot. Early in the show, it sounded truly like Fast and the Furious or some type of action movie was being filmed wherever you are on location, which, they make those movies a lot. I think we're on Fast 10, Fast 12. I haven't seen many of them, but good for the Fast and Furious movies. If the set and the cast is out there, The Rock would be there, and I think Ludacris is in them. And they say, hey, can we film on location? And you give them a couple plays. Movie stars now, so these got to be good. What would you tell them if they're betting some college football this week?
I like your scenario much better because what actually happened is my apartment is right above the dumpsters, and there was just the trash guys coming and picking it up. But
I'm going to imagine it was a heist from a Fast and the Furious movie. That's what I'm going with.
All right, so for the guys at the heist.
Yes.
Favorite is Alabama. If you can find this inside 3, I would take it right now. I think a 3 is fine too. I'm expecting this to move with Tennessee's leading tackler out of this game. Second would be Miami. I took a -4, which seems to be pretty readily available at this point. It's been weird. Louisville took some money right away. It was down to a 3.5, so I thought I might have eaten a bad line, and Miami's just burst back with more money. And it looks like now it might move to 4.5 or 5. I'm seeing some 4.5s out there. My last one would be Michigan against Illinois. A -3, I think, is okay. It's been bouncing all over the place, so I'm going to admit I'm not entirely sure where it moves to, but I've been looking for an opportunity to sell Illinois on the card. Those are my top 3. Hopefully I was clear on the ones I'm waiting on and will take with the injuries.
Yeah, again, I've said it multiple times, but if you guys didn't see the whole show, that's why you want to get in our Discords. The links are below. That's the type of information. Absolutely worth its weight in gold. I'm going to throw a caveat out. Make sure we know the status, but I like Georgia Tech this week. Absolutely going to end up on the card if we get the right breaks. In terms of Haynes King news, I'm going to close this out with another road team, a lot of road teams. I'm going to go with Colorado. +4.5, -108. I just think that's a toss-up type game. I'm willing to say that Colorado can go into Arizona and be just fine. Good work today. Again, we're going to get real greasy with all sorts of James Madison-esque Louisiana Monroe marching towards a double-digit win season after their win total was like 1. Who knows what we're going to get? But on that note, friends, appreciate everyone tuning in. Again, hit the like button on your way out. Help us out. We'll see you guys on Thursday. For me, Matt, and the whole Odd Chopper team, good luck. We'll talk to you soon.